PrepTest 73, the first reading comp passage. It's available as well on familiar.lsac.org. It's section 4 on the exam there. So I want you to take a few moments, just read over this passage. This is the entire passage text, and then we can talk about it together for a little bit before diving into specific questions related to this passage. So just take a few minutes, read it over, and then we can talk about it. I'm going to time you here on my phone. I'll give you about 2.5, 3 minutes to do an initial read of the passage, and then we'll talk about it together. Okay, so this was about 2.5 minutes. And so if you didn't get through the entire thing, that's okay. Some passages could take you up to 3 minutes or longer. And especially if science isn't your thing, totally fine. But as always, the topic shouldn't matter that much. The vocabulary might scare you. The topic might scare you a little bit, and that's natural. But we're reading, as always, for the structure, not for the details themselves. So looking at this particular passage, I'm thinking, okay, Darwin, natural selection, evolution. We probably all have some general frame of reference for that, but I'd be looking for a key word or phrase or sentence that kind of summarizes the thesis or the general idea of the passage itself. And so I'm focusing specifically on my initial read in these lines here. This group of self-proclaimed strict constructionist Darwinians has recently risen to prominence by reducing the theory in just this way. So we have a conflict here between Darwin's articulation of his theory of evolution versus these strict constructionists. So the strict constructionists are actually at odds with Darwin himself. Darwin says evolution isn't just about natural selection, but there are these other people who do reduce it to being simply just natural selection. Then we have a summary of what natural selection is, and then we have many different examples. But in fact, nature provides numerous examples of attributes, for example, over here, and then additionally, we have something else undermining the strict constructionist claim, and so on. So we have a number of examples that are problematizing the strict constructionist view. So overall, I'd be reading this and saying there are two major viewpoints here. We have Darwin's viewpoint on his end saying evolution is not just natural selection. Then on the other hand, we have the strict constructionists who say pretty much it is just all about natural selection. So I think this is an important distinction here. Maybe it's a little bit counterintuitive that Darwin wouldn't have the strict constructionist view himself, but that is the case here. And they're basically saying that things are more complicated than the strict constructionists might believe them to be at first glance. The students saying, as this is a science passage, I knew I would need to focus more. After reading, I quickly thought about the big picture. Darwinians who believe it's the only means are not correct in their thinking. They're called the strict constructionist Darwinians. So these are the people who are too strict and not in line with what Darwin himself believes. And the passage says they actually contradict what Darwin himself says. And the author's viewpoint is, yes, skeptical towards what the constructionists say. The author is more in line with what Darwin is saying over the constructionists. So I think these two paragraphs here are a perfect articulation of what the author is saying here. So very well done to the student.